Amazon is really cheap now. Let's see if you should invest in it. If you were to look into their current PE ratio, it's only at around 30, and previously in 2010 it was around 100. Throughout the years, it has never been as low as 30. So let's look at if we should actually invest in it currently. If you look at its current business, its net sales, 60% is coming from North America, which is their e-commerce business. International is around 21%, and AWS is 19%. When we go to the operating income for Amazon, AWS contributes to 62% of the operating income, while North America business only contributes to 31%, and international at 5%. We can just ignore it. So clearly, AWS is the main business for Amazon. If you were to look at into its operating income from 1 year ago, in Q1 2024, it was at 15 billion, and it increased 20% to 18 billion in Q1 of 2025. Of this 3 billion increase in operating income, 2.2 billion is coming from AWS. North America at 0.8 billion. At 2.2 billion, this is around 73% of the total increase in the operating income. This really shows how important AWS is for Amazon. Let's dive into the AWS segment, and you can see that its net income went from 25 billion to 29 billion, up 17% year on year, and its operating income increased by 23% from 9 billion to 11 billion. And this is the result of three main things. First is because of previous investment done by Amazon. Secondly is competitive pricing. And thirdly, the mix of generative AI services. Here are some examples of the software and process improvement that has been done. So they managed to optimize their server capacity to reduce their infrastructure costs. They use low-cost custom networking gear. They maximize power usage, and they are able to reduce costs by using their own custom silicon. These are all cost reducing initiatives. The fact that Amazon is able to reduce costs by using their own custom silicon, I mean, Nvidia, I'm looking at you. So, I mean, the AWS business growth is impressive, but the real question is, can it keep going? From their CEO, they mentioned that as fast as we put the capacity in is being consumed. So what they're facing is a supply problem and not a demand problem. Demand is very high. And they did say that they are able to drive more revenue for the business if they had more capacity. The good news is that the capacity issue will continue to get better as the year proceeds to the second half of 2025. Personally, I believe that the growth will accelerate at the second half of 2025. Since the North American business makes up of 30% of its operating income, let's take a quick look. The advertising business stands at 15%, while the other revenue comes from its e-commerce business. I think from a margin perspective, the North America business is definitely going to improve and grow. In terms of revenue from the e-commerce business, due to the competitive landscape, sales will most likely increase by the single digits for the year. But the advertising business is the one that's extremely exciting. Looking at their advertising business, they managed to grow their advertising business by 19% year over year to $13.9 billion. This could be pointing to something bigger. Maybe it could be the demise of Google and other smaller websites. If you were to look at Amazon and Google, Amazon managed to grow by 18 to 19%, while Google only grew by 8.5%. Looking at Google's revenue breakdown, Google search increased by 10%, YouTube advertising revenue grew by 10%. The increase of 10% each for Google search and YouTube advertising is mainly due to them increasing the cost per click. Google network revenue went down by 2%. There might be less traffic going to other smaller websites, and most of the traffic is going towards the more popular websites like Amazon, and hence that's where all the ad revenue is going towards. Maybe the shift in traffic due to AI has already started. So I do expect that the advertising revenue to grow at an even higher rate. Personally, I think that Amazon will do well for 2025 and their growth rate will accelerate. If you think that Amazon is able to get all their chips and data centers material in time and then being able to steal more of the advertising business from Google, this is a great time to invest. In the short term, Amazon has already provided its second quarter's 2025 guidance. Net sales, they do expect to grow around 11%, while their operating income is expected to be between 13 billion to 17.5 billion, compared to 14.7 billion in the second quarter of 2024. So if you were to take the mid-range, 15.25 billion, which is around 4% increase. If you were to compare the top end expectation at 17.5 billion, that's a increase of 20% in terms of the operating income.